I am going to beat you into the living death.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man Ant Walker here with the latest edition of the Living Death Show. Happy to have the complete panel back. This is a wonderful time. It's been weeks since all three of us got to sit down and talk some mixed martial arts. So let's go ahead and introduce these two gentlemen who need no introduction, but you know we love them so much we're going to do it anyway. First up is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, and my man Ben Duffy. What's up, Ben?
Reunited, and it feels so good. I am back, had a week off, went to the ATL for my youngest kid's high school graduation. I have moved on to the next phase of my life. My hair is just a little bit grayer. I could not think of a better way to celebrate it than by talking with you guys for an hour or so.
Yeah, and I'm preparing for my daughter's first birthday party. So I'm just at the beginning of this journey, and you are rounding home plate right now. So congratulations to you, sir. All right. And of course, the man who anchors the panel every week with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com. Also my good friend, Mr. Jay Petrie. What's up, Jay?
It does feel good. It feels good to have the band back together again. I feel like we're going to have to release an album that isn't quite as good as it used to be. And people will be like, oh, I like the old stuff better. But you're still going to want to catch us. And nostalgia is going to make you see about like 1.5 farewell tours. And then we'll be like, no, this is really the farewell tour. And then we'll come back 5 years later. So I'm very much looking forward to hanging out with you boys today. I guess I'll throw.
This episode is going to get called Iron Flag.
I am down with that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is the only thing now left to do is to have a versus against another podcast.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, boy. I think we're going to have to start writing some things up and have that conversation.
We just bring our most like hostile repeat guests on, like bring back, Matt, bring
Jed,
Rodney and Jed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Matt, Rodney and Jed.
That's a dream team.
Yeah,
that's like the Legion of Doom right there.
Oh man, I am into this whole idea here, guys. I think we're cooking with gas here. We actually need to probably follow through on this. Yes, audience, you're watching a plan come together in real time, and you'll be like, oh wow, that actually would be kind of good to have these shows fight against one another. I think it'd be good. I guess I'll throw out stat of the week. I don't have a good transition anymore, but that's okay because I have really wonderful things happening. Stat of the week is about the major MMA event that happened because, yes, there was still a major MMA, KSW 70. Mariusz Pudzianowski and Michal Materla fought in the main event in a fight that I never knew I wanted until it was announced and put together. And you've heard me talk about it multiple times. So the stat of the week is 12 because, spoiler alert, Mariusz Pudzianowski scored a just tremendous knockout, one-hitter quitter all the way from Brooklyn to get him out of there. And it's the 12th knockout that he's landed as a KSW fighter. Why is that significant? Because he has scored more knockouts than anybody that's ever fought in KSW. And KSW's been around for a long time. Obviously, they've had 70 cards of number and then multiple before that. That's something interesting and impressive. And at 45 years old, he's still got it. And holy smokes, he brought it.
Who did he pass to take the record?
He's had the record. But the guy before him was Michal Materla. So he beat the record holder at his own game.
And Jan Blachowicz is still in the top a few, isn't he?
Yeah, Jan's in the records for most of them for all of his accolades. It's him, Mamed Khalidov, Jan Blachowicz. They're pretty much the record books.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, his career, he started off as a strong man, and this was sort of a gimmick, him getting into mixed martial arts, and this has actually turned into like an actual reputable career. You can put an asterisk here and there, but the guy has been a consistent performer in mixed martial arts and actually holds a very legitimate record in a very legitimate promotion. So that is something of note. But, of course, the excitement around him is kind of the freak show factor still. That's undeniable, Jay. Obviously, that's why you were about to do a backflip. Yeah, when this was announced, you were ready to do a backflip because of that. But it begs the question, like, KSW rising couple of the promotions here and there, they'll kind of tap into this a little bit, but we've missed out on a lot of potential freak shows that would have been very entertaining along these lines. So you brought up, I think it was last week, you brought up something about what if so-and-so fought Tim Sylvia or something like that. And it got us thinking, what would be a historical fight that we missed between, say, a middleweight and a big heavyweight? And excuse me for jumping out of turn here.
Please.
And it's a fight I still want to see. Anderson Silva versus Fedor. What else you guys got, man?
Well, I hate to just throw like a wet, soggy blanket on the party right off the bat, but if I say Sakuraba versus Krokop or Ninja versus Karatanov, say, oh, we got those, and it was ugly, and it left one guy barely able to talk. I mean, weight classes exist for a reason. If you want to give me middleweights versus just kind of the Mariusz Pudzianowskis of the world, sign me up. Hell, give me featherweights versus those guys, you know, give me Butterbean versus Genki Sudo. But like big, good heavyweights versus middleweights, that worries me. I like the Fedor one because, I mean, there have been times in their careers where Fedor and Anderson Silva probably walked around within 15 pounds of each other's weight.
Oh, sure.
You know, like Fedor consistently weighed in around 228, 230 in Pride, you know, and Anderson Silva for a while there, you know, got to be kind of a decent sized middleweight. Like I like that. But when you're talking about like the big guys and the heavy hitters, that scares me a little bit.
It does, but it's also kind of a fun thought experiment because it's happening and it's happened. Now I will say that, you know, you think of those the big heavyweights. Those big heavyweights have won most of those fights. I would wager. I don't have the stats, the numbers, the figures in front of me for that particular category, but I would imagine that cements the weight classes exist for a reason. I mean, you could tell in the Pudzianowski fight, anytime he'd land even remotely on Materla would react. And Materla would hit him a couple times, and he'd walk through it and go ha ha ha, like a Bond villain. He'd puff out his chest and just go through it, and it was very impressive. I think I took note of something like that on the play-by-play I did for the event. But then there are fights like, you know, Dan Henderson versus Fedor Emelianenko, and you go, okay, I see that happening, and I see that being interesting, and I see that being surprising for a lot of people. And as we know, Fedor got undercutted, which is I believe that's where we really kind of brought that term out, the undercut from that particular knockout when he knocked Fedor out underneath his own armpit. But there's fights you kind of think of that are historical, and you wonder what they'd be like a Vanderlei Silva when he was not quite big mega Hulk mode versus like a Big Nog. And you go, okay, you got the Shooter Box and the Team Nogueira, so it isn't quite the crossover. They never fight because they're friends kind of thing. Obviously, they were friends. But there are all kinds of fun, interesting ideas like who, and it's like historical and it's kind of off the rails and it doesn't make sense. But like Rich Franklin, like obviously Rich Franklin fought Ken Shamrock, so you can't suggest that one. But Rich Franklin against like Randy Couture, that's not crazy. And it could have almost come together because of I mean, Rich fought Chuck and Chuck fought Randy, so that's not out of this world. And then you think of other crazy ones like Chael Sonnen versus, I don't know, Dan Severn. I think that happened. Didn't it happen?
Forrest and Dan Severn definitely
Well,
happened.
no, that definitely happened because that was the first book, because Forrest was he gave a multiple choice in one of his books about the things he was talking to Dan Severn on the way down. He was making fun of him like Freddie Mercury and stuff because of his mustache, because he's taking him down. But there are some historical weirdo fights like that don't make sense at all, but you line them up and go, what the heck would happen? Like Nate Marquardt versus Andrei Arlovsky. Doesn't make sense at all, but you kind of think about it and go, huh. I don't know if I would just go that Arlovsky would walk through Marquardt, but it's a historical oddity, that thing. I mean, just it's that kind of thought that I stop. I don't want to go like Weidman versus Stipe. I don't want to go the best, because that's talking about like what Ben was talking about, because then we're getting scary, because we don't want the best heavyweight. We want a Mariusz Pudzianowski who's respectable and he's got crazy power, but he's not going to just do what Stipe did to Fabio Maldonado, as we remember him from EFN. and just embarrass him. I mean, think about that's what I'm thinking. And you got like, what do you got?
Well, what I'm thinking is the problem that we're having with these is that you got to have a tremendous skill gap between the middleweight and the heavyweight in order to make this remotely competitive.
Okay. Yeah.
And when you start talking about Marquardt versus Arlovsky, you're not skill wise, you're not far enough away to where to negate the fact that the heavier man, especially the heavier man that's a striker, is going to lay life altering damage on the smaller guy. And then you have to go, if you go the other way around, if the heavier guy is the grappler, then you're talking about the most boring, just lay and pray fight that we just don't really need. Like it lacks any of the entertainment value. I say we get someone dumb skilled against someone dumb unskilled, but just really big, and then we see what happens. Like Kung Lee versus Bob Sapp. Pre tap out to the direction of the wind changing in the arena, Bob Sapp, like the Bob Sapp that actually tried. Then we got something interesting there.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, take a giant heavyweight with some skills but not great skills. Take like a Wes Sims or a Gam Miggy. You tell me that Paulo Filho couldn't have climbed one of those dudes like a ladder and like armbarred him or choked him out? Like you probably would have locked on like a flying armbar that actually took a long time because you had to climb up the dude, get the armbar, and like the whole thing's happening while he's hanging off him. Like I would love to see that, sure.
Yeah. And then you think of guys like that are hyper skilled against specialists in other fields, like Lyoto Machida versus Frank Mir, because the way better striker and a way better grappler, but Frank Mir isn't always the best at just getting a takedown, and Machida's really good at stopping them. That's the ball game that I'm thinking. Like I'm not talking like Derek Lewis versus Robert Whittaker, because oh boy, maybe I'm thinking about that after all. Because Whittaker could reach him with a head kick, man.
Yeah. I mean, Derek Lewis doesn't belong in any conversations like this because it's just, he's just too much of an outlier in too many different ways. And he's still
you don't want him touching 185-pound man.
Exactly. He's been one of the best heavyweights in the world for quite some time now. Simply because he can dislodge your head from the rest of your body, and that alone, and while still being sneakily skilled at it. So, I'm still give me Anderson versus Fedor. We still could get this. It still can happen. We need this. Please make it happen.
I'm going to throw out one last a very interesting grappling type fight, just that you would never have thought of, and you go maybe. Jacare Souza, when he, middleweight version, not puffed up to a fiver against Josh Barnett.
Okay.
Catch Ken versus.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. All right. I mean, we could go on for days.
Oh, I know. We definitely could. Yeah. Just kind of tee him up.
All right. Well, let's keep things pushing before this turn. We can get so easily derailed every time we talk. But all right, so right now Nate Diaz is doing something that he's been doing for kind of months at this point, complaining that the UFC is not giving him a fight. I think I have a good idea of what all three of us are going to say about this. But gentlemen, what is the holdup?
I don't know. I mean, he's been saying that he's been asking for a fight with Khamzat Chimaev, which runs counter to what the UFC has been saying. Obviously, to Chimaev himself saying, nobody will fight me. I assume that there's a money thing that's not being worked out in the background somewhere. Because I believe that Nate Diaz will fight anybody. Like, he's not scared. But I also don't think he's going to fight anybody for any amount of money. He understands at this point where he's at in his career, how many paydays he has left. And I think he's going to try to do his best to make sure that they're large ones. And so I would guess that that's what the holdup is.
It's such a strange situation because, the UFC and Dana White are so famous for claiming we're going to get you 3 fights a year, Period. The end. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make it happen and go together. Now, Nate hasn't fought since the Edwards fight in June last year. And, you know, he was respectable. I mean, he won that 5th round and made people talk about. That was the actual story of the fight. It wasn't that Leon Edwards beat him for 4 rounds or the 49-46 scorecard or 49-40 or 49-40s, 48, whatever. But anything like, I lost my track there. It wasn't that. It was the 5th round Diaz. Oh man, if he had 10 more seconds, you could have gotten him, anything like that. And it made people want to see him. So to see the UFC apparently have a guy that really wants to fight and he is a huge draw, I actually don't understand, other than the financial reasons why they could be holding back, saying we're not going to pay you $4 million to fight so-and-so, because the fights are there. There are multiple opponents that would be more than willing to take a Diaz fight. I'm not talking about like a top 10 or a top 15. I'm talking about a name like the Dustin Poirier fight. That fight could have, should have, and would have happened. I'd still be interested to see it, and I don't care that it doesn't mean anything, and that Dustin Poirier would dog walk him. I don't care about that. It would be an interesting fight. And then you look at the Chimaev fight and go, oh, gee, I wonder how that would go. But it's still something that they could do, and it would sell. So this is my curiosity. A Diaz fight is one of those fights that no matter who you book him against, basically, you will make more money than you are paying him to do it. So how can the UFC go, we're going to try and lowball Diaz, even though he will make money hand over fist to the point that he will be alone, his name on the marquee alone will sell and pay for the rest of it. So it's strange to me how that dynamic can still be in place, because we know Diaz is a money fight. He still is. I don't know why. Honestly, I don't know why, given his results. I mean, he's only fought 3 times in the past 5 or 6 years, and he's only won 1 of them. So I don't know why, but he still is. So the UFC not throwing him every fight, is there... Actually, I got one question, and maybe you can help me with this. Is Nate 1 fight away from being a free agent?
Yes, that's exactly what this is. This is hardball negotiation tactics. I'm almost 100% certain I would put up my house on the idea that if Nate Diaz were to sign a contract extension, he would have a fight booking instantly.
Yeah.
Against probably whoever they want. So whoever he wants. So the obvious answer is Conor McGregor. That's the obvious one. That's the fight that's been out there. Problem is, Conor McGregor still, much like Diaz, defying the results of what he's actually accomplished in the cage in recent years, is still a huge draw, is still a big name in the sport. If Nate Diaz walks away from the UFC after defeating Conor McGregor, we're talking about a free agent who can write his ticket pretty much anywhere, and that includes in the world of boxing as well. He's a guy who can walk outside of the octagon and command a huge dollar figure from anyone, and there will be no shortage of people lining up to sign him to do something in the combat realm. You look at Chimaev. I mean, I think we all agree that Chimaev will absolutely decimate Nate Diaz, but Chimaev looked beatable against Gilbert Burns. He showed vulnerability that he had not shown previous. So once again, this guy that the UFC has been trying to build and putting all this marketing muscle behind Chimaev, man, if he comes out there and loses to Nate Diaz, or even just has a bad round against Nate Diaz, you're talking about Nate Diaz walking away, being able to command whatever dollar amount in any other combat realm that he so chooses. The idea is that the UFC, like Anderson Silva said very recently, that they want you to look bad on the way out. They don't want you to be valuable to anyone else. So this has now become a game of let's not take the money that we can get using this guy while he's on our roster. Let's make sure no one else can use him. And I think that's what the priority has shifted to. And, the UFC has shown themselves capable of doing this time and time again. So I think this is a very clear case of that.
But then they're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies.
Such is the UFC's motto.
I agree. I agree. And we've talked about this and the short-sightedness of the UFC. I've railed about this for a while, but I still don't understand it. Because, like, I can explain it and I can say, okay, I see how they're doing this because they're trying to do this. They're trying to lock him up. They're trying to lock him down, maybe get him frustrated, maybe get him tired of the sport, or maybe give him or lowball him so he'll finally say, fine, just let me fight and go. Or they give him a bad matchup and he'll say, fine, just let me go. And he loses and he's looked poorly. Now, the only people, let's be honest, if Nate Diaz were a free agent, the only place he's going is boxing. He's not going to Bellator. He's not going to KSW. He's not going to Rise. They can't afford him. Like, this is a guy who commands multi-million-dollar payouts to the degree that only a boxing fight would do. But who would he fight? Would you really want to? Would you really want to see or really care to see? I honestly don't. So you can disagree. Nate Diaz versus Manny Pacquiao. I don't want to see that.
You don't want, but do you realize how much that would sell? That would sell tremendously.
It would sell crazy. I'm not denying that.
Adrian Bronner, like there's so many names that make sense in this sort of realm.
Yeah.
And Nate Diaz is a guy who's deeply embedded in boxing already. He's a guy who Andre Ward talks glowingly about whether or not those stories are grossly exaggerated or not. You know what I'm saying?
The Bronner Diaz press conferences alone would be.
Yeah,
I would pay-per-view like them just talking shit at each other across the table.
Absolutely. And do you think that Bellator or KSW or Ryzen or any other of the top tier of mixed martial arts promotions wouldn't empty their bank accounts right now to bring in Nate Diaz for a pay-per-view? Because it would sell no matter who they put him up against. And there's no shortage of people out there in the free market, outside of the UFC's grasp, that they can sign up and put it right next to him. I wouldn't be surprised if Bellator could tap Josh Thompson on the shoulder and say, hey, you want to run this back? You want to come out of retirement for this one? Ben Henderson, as much as he's on this last leg, you could put that together again.
He's
AJ
the
McKee
card.
is hunting down people to establish his legacy on right now. Do you mean to tell me that Bellator would not throw every dollar that they had access to put on a Nate Diaz versus AJ McKee pay-per-view? It doesn't stop with this man. If BKFC can come up with the money to bring Paulie Maldonado or just attract certain names, do you think they won't try to come up with the money, even if it means paying $50 to everyone on the prelims? They will find a way to put Nate Diaz in. They will take out new loans and do whatever else, because it is almost guaranteed that you're going to make that money back. So Nate Diaz has his options open, and especially in boxing, he has his options wide open, not necessarily for his future health, for his future brain preservation or whatever, but the money is there if Nate Diaz is out there on the market.
Well, I mean, we're talking about legitimate boxers as prospective opponents here, but I mean, you talk about a guy who probably would not hurt Nate Diaz's brain, has that same kind of anti-hero iconoclastic thing. You telling me that Jake Paul would not give this man, $5, $6, $10 million to fight him?
Yeah, and it would be a thing. But Ben, maybe you can help me, and it kind of clued me in a little bit. Why isn't the UFC re-signing Nate Diaz to a deal? Why don't you sign him to an 8-fight deal like Anderson Silva? The kind of deal where he's not going to do 8 fights, and you have him forever, and then you can lock that down. Why if we know that Nate Diaz is such a massive draw, what on earth is stopping them from using him and trotting him out every 6 months?
Probably Nate Diaz.
Well, I think it kind of harks back, like what Ant and I, talked about, kind of, goes together here, because I think the UFC is probably trying to do that, and Diaz realizing that 8 fights exceeds probably his remaining shelf life is not going to do that for anything less than kind of like fuck you money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because once he's done with this, he's just going to want to go teach jiu-jitsu and do appearances at weed shops and kind of, live his best life for the next 30 or 40 years.
Yeah. This is an end game moment for Nate at this point. And he is, despite his public persona, despite, you know, the perception of Nate Diaz as just, you know, kind of this thug who just says whatever he wants. And this is a guy who comes to the negotiating table knowing exactly what he wants and knowing exactly what he's worth and acting upon it. Hence him being so infrequently in the cage over the past 5-6 years. So he is not the one who's just going to sign that deal just to jump in there. He's the guy who's going to wait it out, who's going to play chicken with the UFC and see who blinks first. So much respect to him for that. I quite frankly, I would love to see whatever he does next. So, all right, fellas, let's keep things pushing, because of course, with the world of mixed martial arts comes the legal trouble, potential legal trouble, I should say, in this case, that seems to follow fighters around. This is a pretty unique story, and I think we might have some interesting takes on this one. Mark Munoz, former middleweight in the UFC, standout in the division, had some great fights and had a very respectable career, transitioned into a good coach as well. But, you know, mainly coaching wrestling in a high school, he's gotten into a little trouble because he let two students that he was coaching on the wrestling team, because they had some sort of dispute, and he allowed them to box one another to settle said dispute. He has now been suspended from that job, and there's this brewing free Mark Munoz rallying cry in the MMA world. Does that make sense to you, gentlemen? What do we think about this whole situation?
I have more questions than answers at this point, because the details that were reported are pretty scanty. Like, I didn't even see anything that conclusively said that they were students that he coached on the wrestling team. It just said that they were students. So the questions I have, were these students that he actually had any sort of direct oversight for? Were they actual members of the wrestling team, or were they just random students that knew, hey, Coach Munoz used to be a fighter? That's question number one. Question number two, the article implies that they wore gloves. Like it said, lace up the gloves. I don't know if that was just the news writer taking some, you know, poetic license, but were they wearing headgear? Like, these are minors, and they're minors that he might not actually have had any real responsibility or liability for. Like, as cool as it sounds, and obviously would, if I had to choose, would much rather have a couple of students punching each other in a supervised environment than shooting each other. But under the best possible circumstances, say these were guys that he coached on the wrestling team, that they were wearing headgear, as you would want even minors actually doing boxing lessons to have on, this is still a bad look. Like, just, why would you do that, Munoz? It's, yeah, like, it's silly, it's irresponsible, and I would be upset if, like, one of my kids had, you know, been allowed to do that.
It almost defies description. Like, I mean, like the so far the details are scarce, to the point of, we know a few details. We know that they did in fact lace up boxing gloves, so they were wearing boxing gloves, but there's no report of anything like that. I will go out on a limb and say no, they did not stop. Go to the Dick's Sporting Goods, buy a couple of mouthpieces, boil them, make sure they're fitting, and then get in the whatever and bust each other up. So there is no way that this was done under, you know, any sort of like boxing club type of status or whatever. This is reckless. This is foolish. Even if all he did was kids came up to him and said, "Hey, can we put the boxing gloves on and mess around?" And he said, "Yeah, go ahead." That's the end of it. Like that. There's like, when he's the authority figure that allegedly signs off on this, but even by saying yes, you're signing off on it, so it doesn't matter. You're giving permission to do so. What are you doing? You're an educator, And even though you're coaching a sports team at a school, you are in the vein of an educator. There are a list of things you can't do. And saying, yes, kids, go fight it out. I'll watch is not something you can do. You can't, just sit in the back and go, fight, 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 fight. There's a reason that all of the TV shows you've watched in the history of your life, when there's two kids fighting in the high school or whatever, the teacher has to go, oh, break it up, break it up, break it up. The teacher's never like, yeah, because they would not be a teacher anymore. And the details that more they come out, I don't know if I'm going to want to know, because they're not going to be good. Like, there's no way that this will be that was responsibly taken and the steps were taken to make sure that this was conducted in a safe manner. No, the report says that these guys they were having a dispute, settle the dispute, whatever the words are specifically. That probably doesn't mean they were on good terms. And we're like, well, good job. Let's make sure we have a nice sporting match together. No, this was a slug it out type of situation based on the reports. And that's, no. You make us in the MMA community look bad when that happens, and it's really a shame.
I don't know if this is if I'm playing devil's advocate or if I'm just like a depraved person, but I didn't really have much trouble with this. I really I'm not going to join on a free Mark Munoz train. Like, I'm not going to do that, because this is irresponsible. It's not something that you would want teachers or sports coaches to participate in. This is not how it goes down. One, I do have a lot of questions about this, because as far as like headgear and mouth guards and stuff, if they were students on the wrestling team, pretty sure they had mouth guards. They would have them already. I seriously doubt that Mark Munoz just had boxing gloves lying around. So they would have to get them somewhere, unless he just had them in his car. I don't know if he still coaches high level MMA, so maybe he just has stuff in his trunk or whatever. If that's the case, maybe he had headgear there too. I don't know. But if we know for sure they had gloves, and if they're students in the wrestling team, they would have mouth guards. So I'm like, all right, not so bad. And then on top of that, like, this is, and I have to kick myself for siding with some pretty, dumb people in general, but this is sort of a thing towards natural justice. I think something that our society does lack. I want to know what the dispute was about as well. Yeah. Because I want to know if this was something worth fighting for. If two guys, one of them stepped on each other's shoes or something, and then this becomes an issue, then it's like, okay, this is stupid, don't fight about it. But if it's something real that warrants, beating down somebody, all right, we'll beat them down in a safer environment. I'm sure Munoz is qualified to referee such a thing. He's qualified to keep this as controlled as possible. So I'm strangely like okay with it under certain circumstances. And maybe that makes me a warped person, but we've already discussed this. I am a warped person, and I'm okay with that. I don't know, fellas, am I talking real crazy here?
Well, I don't object to the idea of like some real world consequences for talking shit and street justice. Here's a counter example that will kind of illustrate how I feel about it. My friend Jeremy Mahan, head coach of War Training Center here in Houston, they put on a smoker last year. Just got local gyms, and they put out the call for what they wanted. Just, it was a list, 285-pound amateurs with between 2 and 6 fights, 240-pound women, who have been training for at least 6 months but haven't had a fight yet. Just, to get some sensible matchups. The very bottom one was 2 untrained people who have beef. The difference is the untrained people who had beef were adults who could sign a waiver and consent to what was going on. Like, just what if one of those kids got a tooth knocked out? Like, let alone an eye. Thanks, Michael Bisping, for jumping in on Munoz's side here. But kid gets a tooth knocked out, comes home from school. Yeah, I got in a boxing match with Jeff. Coach Munoz said it was okay. My tooth is out. What's that parent going to say? Who's paying for that?
For this? Yeah.
This is a private school.
Yeah.
By the way.
That's why they have insurance.
Yeah. They probably got dental insurance. Like, no big deal. But yeah, just it becomes a whole different thing when you realize that they're talking about probably a couple of 16-year-old kids.
Yeah. That's kind of why I'm more on the draconian side, because of the details we know. I mean, even if they were 18, again, they didn't sign a waiver.
Or did they?
If they're going, I mean, you can. Hey, man,
Yeah.
we don't know, so you're
Like,
right.
Yeah.
Hey, man, first thing I said was I've got more questions than answers here.
Yeah.
But reasonably speaking, you can surmise these private school kids didn't write it out and plan to do this accordingly and make sure that this is situated the way it is. Otherwise, there probably wouldn't be as big of a debacle as it was. But yes, if they're whatever age they are, you're still minors, or even if they're 18, they're under the supervision of the school that they're attending. And it's Mark, you gave a statement that said you've never, under no circumstance would I encourage kids to settle a dispute through fighting. That's a quote that Mark Munoz said to MMA Junkie. Just start a boxing club, man. In your next school, just start a boxing club. And there you're done. You're settled, because then anybody participates has to consent to this activity. So
you have a boxing ring and
or don't
protective.
or don't. I'm sorry to step on you. Or don't form a wrestling team. Form an MMA squad. Then you're already doing the punching things and the other things like that. There's just, I don't know. Mistakes were made, decisions were made poorly, and it's just it's disappointing. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
You know, and the thing is, you guys are right, and I'm definitely wrong. But I feel very comfortable in being wrong on something like this.
Yeah.
You know, and granted, this is not my child in this situation, and I'm sure if my son came home with a black eye and like, bro, I thought you were playing badminton. What's going on? There would definitely be hell to pay as a father. But the part of me that's still a knucklehead is like, okay, I do wish that society allowed for more just fisticuffs to settle certain disputes, because other avenues are exhausted or too permanent, if you get my drift. So but anyway, let's keep things pushing, because we need to get into the greatest titled segment in all of media history. I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons, where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not since we last met. I'm going to start with you, Ben. What's your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, the UFC announced that the long-awaited Octagon debut of Danielle Wolf is going to take place a little later this summer. She's going to take on Norma Dumont in a featherweight bout. Danielle Wolf has an unimpeachable boxing pedigree. You know, she's a multiple-time world champ. She is 38 years old. She is 1-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, and she's about to fight somebody that pretty much any way you slice it is a top 5 featherweight. What kind of joke is this? What if a 1-0 fighter, no matter what their credentials are in another sport, can come in and fight a top 5 fighter in mixed martial arts? That division needs to be dissolved and never spoken of again. It needs to be burned to the ground and the earth salted where it was so that it never grows back. If you can come in as a 1-0 fighter and fight a top 5 fighter, it's either 1996, it's like Pride, and you're being brought in as a sacrificial lamb for Crow Cop or Fedor or something, or if it's 2022, there's a serious problem with your division. And it doesn't even matter the outcome of the fight. If Norma Dumont absolutely splatters 38-year-old neophyte Danielle Wolf, that's no more than we expect. If Danielle Wolf plunks Norma Dumont, then everything I said about destroying that division and making it go away goes double.
Yeah.
There. I am not surprised, Mr. Falcons, but I am just upset at my own life choices.
Would you like
working in this space?
Brock Lesnar.
Would you like to be double surprised, Mr. Falcons, about that? If Danielle Wolf won, she would be the number 4 featherweight in the world, because that's what Norma Dumont is. So
Brock
that's not
Lesnar.
crazy. And the other thing you might not be surprised about, Danielle Wolf, accomplished boxer, many, many times in boxing. I think she has 30 wins to her credit. She has recorded 0 knockouts in her entire boxing career as a featherweight that is 5'11". Carry on.
Brock Lesnar. Wow. All right.
Hey, Brock Lesnar was 4-0 before he got, to like fighting.
He got-
actual-
he was 1-0
he had the-
coming into the UFC, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
He was
they
one
had
of
him
he was
fight
over
Frank
like
Mir, who was Frank Mir was one fight back from nearly being
motorcycle.
cut.
Oh yeah.
It was. I thought Frank Mir had a few fights back by then.
Well, no, he beat Hardonk, but before that he had
Okay.
lost to
Yeah, the
So,
motorcycle
he
accident.
was
and everything.
nowhere near the
Yeah.
top
All
10 or
right.
15.
After it was post Sylvia. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I stand corrected. I will no longer throw shade at your. I'm
No.
not surprised, Mr. Falcon.
But at the same time, let us also be fair to you, Ant. He was a 2-1 fighter fighting for the UFC heavyweight title.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's be fair to
Yeah,
me
2-1.
because
Yeah.
yes, fairness
We're
is
fair
all.
to everybody. We're
Yes.
fair to everybody.
Well, be fair to me.
Now
'cause
that I
I'm
know
me.
that like Ant just wants to throw hands, if I say the wrong thing, like I'm going to be a little more guarded. See?
No, just the fact that you think I want to throw hands with you means that I need to simmer down because I don't want them problems, Ben. I don't.
No, come on. There's no blast double through the screen here.
I'm that petrified of one though, so we'll just leave it at that.
Oh boy.
All right, Jay. So it's your turn to share with us your "I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons" moment this week.
So we're going back to Poland. We're going back to a remarkable situation. It was the second fight on the card. It was a catch weight of 188 pounds. Now, I won't get into the details of the catch weight. I mean, missed flight and missed weight and a whole bunch of drama and lost luggage and just a mess that this fight, the rematch, came together between Albert Ojimkowski and Tommy Quinn. Well, they fought, and Ojimkowski was doing what we expected he would do, and because their first fight was a mauling until an illegal knee forced a no contest. Ojimkowski was tossing Tommy Quinn around, and he hit a slam, and the slam made Tommy Quinn's elbow go that way. And it's not supposed to go that way. In fact, it is supposed to go the opposite direction. And it was all the way cooked. It was the press release said TKO broken elbow. I don't know the exact damage of it, but it was gnarly. It was a very rude awakening to, oh boy, let's go. It's time for really nasty broken injuries. And in the sport of competition, Tommy Quinn, he goes to the hospital, gets treated, gets his arm wrapped and everything like that. And Albert decides to go visit his broken buddy. And he brings him food and he brings him sweets and he hangs out with them. I don't know if there was alcohol allowed, but there's a picture out there and you can find them on Instagram of them standing around together eating burgers. And let me tell you, it warmed my heart to see a fight ending brutal. We're talking 9-month layoff. You could hear the tendons going bing, bing as the elbow went that way. A career altering injury. And then they're standing around smiling, eating burgers outside the hospital. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, that those little moments can still warm my heart because that sure did.
And not a bad one at all there. All right, well, I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of the aforementioned Khamzat Chimaev. Yesterday on Twitter, this video started circulating. I originally saw it on an account. Abhors is the name. I think it's just more like a fan account. So forgive me for not knowing where this video originated from, but this is footage of Chimaev training with noted warlord and scumbag Kadyrov. What's his damn first name?
Ramzan.
Ramzan Kadyrov. And like Chimaev is getting like tossed, he's getting tripped, he's getting outboxed, he's getting kicked, he's getting taken down and GMP'd and everything else. What I find so funny about this whole thing is like it's so clear Chimaev is just letting this happen. If Chimaev put just the talent in his pinky into this so-called sparring session, there would be warlord parts scattered all over the floor, and a lot of stuff to mop up. So I mean, we can get into the seriousness of a video like this as far as sports washing for public relations sake, or even just the fact that it's very difficult to believe that this video, which also I also saw images of Chimaev doing the same thing for like
With the kids.
Kadyrov's kids, also like taking kicks and stuff from some little fucker who probably can't really fight. Like it's hard to believe that this wasn't done under duress. That if he were to do what he's actually capable of doing, that his family wouldn't suffer consequences as well. So, I'm not surprised by the full situation. However you want to take it, I'd still find the footage to be just mind blowing. Watching this out of shape, plump buffoon handling one of the best fighters in the world right now. I just find that absolutely just mind blowing. Oh, you're muted, Ben.
Looking at it from our perspective as Americans, it just seems like buffoonery. But understand that in Chechnya, the cult of personality around Kadyrov is so intertwined with military strength and martial arts prowess that, like, this actually is propaganda that feeds into the idea that Ramzan Kadyrov is one of the toughest guys in the world. Like, his I say constituents like he's this like freely elected like democratic dude, but his subjects see this and they don't have the ironic overlay that we have when we see this. It doesn't look like buffoonery. It looks like their beloved leader showing that he's one of the toughest guys in the world. And this, I mean, not to get too political here, but Chechnya is a country that is disproportionately supplying the Russian army that is just doing horrible shit in Ukraine right now. Like, this isn't just like innocently rolling around and, having slapstick. Like, this is bad. That's all I got on that. Like, it's bad.
It's bad. Oh, go ahead.
I'm not saying that Chimaev necessarily had a whole lot of choice in the matter. This, it may not have been just a basketball or football team refusing to go to the White House and meet Trump after winning a championship. This isn't that.
I feel stronger, even stronger than Duffy does. I feel like this is something the UFC should do something about. They can't control what he does, who he sees. I mean, remember, after all, he's just an independent contractor, subject to daily, weekly drug test possibilities and unscheduled situations and horrible negotiations and all of the other things that make him just a total independent contractor. But Duffy is right on the money. This is a propaganda video for a military that is currently invading Ukraine. Like, there's no fun way to slice it, and we can kind of write this off as a joke. This is boosting the persona of Ramzan Kadyrov, who is a war criminal and is sanctioned by the U.S. government for some heinous crimes that are not alleged. They're not accused. They're documented, what he's done to the country. And to have the number 3 welterweight in the world just go and pal around with Ramzan Kadyrov and the UFC say nothing is not okay. Like, there's one thing. Oof. Even the Ramzan paying Verdums and Edgars and all those to fly, and Mears to come hang out and sit with him and drink champagne or whatever, that's problematic and questionable. But then the attending the events and working with them is even worse. But this is a whole different kind of level. This is active interest in supporting and propping up a war criminal. And for the UFC to not even acknowledge that this is happening, this isn't like a new thing either. Like, they're buddy. Ramzan Kadyrov buys Khamzat Chimaev cars and crazy expensive vehicles and all kinds of things. And they're all together and brother and Chimaev thanked him in one of his post-fight interviews by saying brother, which is obviously brother could mean anybody, but in this context it meant Kadyrov. This isn't okay. This is a real big problem here. And yes, you can very easily and confidently be like, yeah, well, I understand Chimaev's from Chechnya, so he has family there that might be in danger should he just try and snuff Kadyrov and might be doing it. But at the same time, this is a perfect opportunity for a 2022 version of Operation Valkyrie. I'm just saying.
I one thing that I wonder, does Kadyrov, does he buy his own propaganda? Does he actually think
Yeah.
that he is capable of doing anything of the sort to someone like Chimaev?
I doubt he said, go easy on me. I bet Chimaev is doing that out of the self-preservation mechanic.
Yeah, because I really wonder, like, all three of us are, we've had our time training on the mats and Muay Thai and boxing gyms and karate and wrestling. We've got our very nice mixture of martial arts background between the three gentlemen sitting here today. Now, in your experience, rolling, sparring, etc., did any of this look like look like Chimaev was even remotely trying, or that Kadyrov looked like he knew any idea what he was doing?
It's like when I'd be the senpai to a children's class and be like, oh, you got me. Oh,
Yeah.
good, right. Oh, yeah, you turn here and go. Oh, yeah. That's
yeah. This was like me taking my daughter and putting her like stacking on the pillow and then having her dive off to like drop an elbow on me like that. That's what this looked like. But I mean, it definitely gets into some dark stuff as far as the origin of this video, but just on the surface, just silly stuff, like just mind-blowingly dumb. And to anyone who believes that Kadyrov would have a snowball's chance in hell in any sort of sparring session, you are dumb as rocks, and I have some beachfront property to sell you in Idaho. So, let's keep things pushing
for that matter.
And yeah, a lot of beachfront property there. All right, fellas. Well, the UFC is back in action after a much needed weekend off. They're back at the Apex Center, and there are 14 fights with a headliner of Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Let's talk briefly about that main event. How do we see this one playing out, fellas?
Jab, 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 front kick, jab, front kick, circle, jab, front kick, whoosh, overhand right, miss, left hook, just so close, jab, front kick, 5 rounds later. Alexander Volkov.
Jay is already Jay's writing his play-by-play for this event via voice to text right now. Like, I assume those words are just
come Saturday, all you got to do is press enter.
Yeah, I don't want to crap on the matchup because, hey, man, they're heavyweights and crazy stuff has and would continue to happen. But Volkov has a 2-inch reach that he'll treat like a 20-inch reach when it comes to fighting a looping kickboxer that doesn't throw many straight shots. Like, let's be honest. I like Biggie Boy a lot. I've actually been watching him since he fought in Ryzen against Andrei Kovalev a long time ago, and I've liked what I've seen in kickboxing. But you aren't going to see many straight shots out of him. You know who you see straight shots out of? The Alexander Volkov that will jab your face off. So give me, if it's not a 5-round decision, it's like a 4th round TKO of, okay, my solar plexus hurts too much.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. Rozenstruik has become a guy that is a little trigger shy and just doesn't adjust and doesn't get out of first gear if his opponent is doing anything he doesn't like. I mean, he got snake charmed by Cyril Gane, but it turns out Cyril Gane's going to do that to a lot of people before it's all said and done. But yeah, Volkov is just built to stymie Rozenstruik. I mean, you talked about the jab. A couple of those push kicks up the middle that he also likes as his even longer jab, basically. A couple of those, and yeah, Rozenstruik is going to go inert. I am predicting that there will be multiple rounds where Rozenstruik throws fewer than 10 strikes.
I think that broke Ant in multiple different varieties. I mean, Rozenstruik.
No, I'm just laughing. At least Ant is stuck in like a pensive pose.
Yeah, it's too bad. Oh, there we
It's
go.
just it's just that every single time we use Skype, I get kicked off at some point. It happened a lot later this time, so I'm thankful for that. And it wasn't when I was talking, so even better.
Yeah.
Jairzinho Rozenskype. It just doesn't do what it's supposed to do.
Nope. Getting out jabbed by a StreamYard. Yeah, man, I really think that that you guys are perfect on this one. Volkov is just custom built to destroy a guy like Rozenstruik, and even if it's not a violent destruction, as in like Rozenstruik on the canvas unconscious, like this is going to be at least a systematic breakdown. Like he's, Rozenstruik has shown himself capable of being outmaneuvered and outclassed on the feet several times, even against Alistair Overeem, where he got that ferocious knockout in the last 10 seconds. He was getting pieced up just about every moment before then. I think Volkov has the capabilities to do that, but only worse with that reach. This is probably not going to be a good night at the office for him. And you can eliminate the grappling factor from Rozenstruik. Like I don't see him suddenly channeling Curtis Blades and trying to get Volkov to the ground. Like that's just not going to happen. I think this is going to be contested entirely on the feet with one-way traffic. Volkov should win a very comfortable decision on Saturday. All right, fellas. So as far as the rest of the card is concerned here, let's go ahead and transition that into quick hits right here. So let me get this time on the clock set. I wish I was so busy, like pissed off about this Skype thing, that I didn't have my clock already ready. So apologize for not getting my my affairs in order due to the our technical difficulties here. But let me go ahead and put 30 seconds on the clock. Ben, I'm going to start with you. What is the most relevant fight on UFC Fight Night 207, meaning which winner is closest to a title shot?
Nobody is super close to a title shot on this card from the top down. Like every single fighter in this card is at least 2 or 3 wins away from even being in the discussion. But I'm going to say it's either the co-main between Dan Ige and Movsar Evloev, or ironically enough, the opener between Erin Blanchfield and JJ Aldrich. If Blanchfield wins.
Okay. Not bad answers there. Not bad at all. And such respect for the clock as well. Hope you guys didn't hear the motorcycles that are going off my neighborhood right now. All right. Jay, let me go ahead and ask you a question as well. Which fight sticks out to you as the most exciting fight on the card on paper?
I'm a little more intrigued about Damon Jackson versus Dan Argueta than the fight that was scheduled before, which was what, Derek Minner? I think, which was also going to be a bananas fight. I've been watching Dan Determined for a good while because he fought in LFA. I think he actually debuted in LFA, and then he puttered over in Khamzat for a little while and came back to LFA, and has looked like a stud. So this is for the de facto LFA featherweight title, and I am here for it.
All right, good answer. That's exactly the answer I would have come up with too. That's like anytime Damon Jackson fights, expect something crazy to happen. So he's a guy that I no matter the results, I think he's going to be kind of sticking around for a while, pretty much as long as he wants to. Speaking of the prospect of losing a roster spot, Jay, for the purposes of not having me sound like a crazy person, please ask me a question.
So we talk about the winners getting title shots and doing the good things and being exciting, but we got to talk about the down notes. So who on this card do you think has the greatest chance of losing their roster spot should they get defeated?
I say take your pick between the loser of Felice Herrick and Karolina Kowalkiewicz. Like between them, they haven't won a fight in their last 5 or 6. I believe it was. Felice Herrick, especially as someone who's never stood out in the division. She's always just kind of been there and been thought of more as like a pretty face than anything else. And we know how the UFC loves to promote to the pervs. But Karolina Kowalkiewicz was a title challenger and has fallen off so hard. Neither one of them is probably going to stick around once this is over.
That's the easy answer. And that's the smart answer, but I'm going to disagree. I know we're not playing that part.
Oh no, go ahead.
Because I feel this is a double retirement match. Like Karolina Kowalkiewicz has been very clear about being done. She was done after the Jessica Penne fight. And then she decided, no, I want one more to go out and get that one win. And Felice Herrig's on. I mean, Kowalkiewicz has lost her last 5. And Felice Herrig has lost her last 3. They're both 36, 37, and they're nowhere near anything they thought they'd be. So I think this is going to be a retirement type of match where the UFC will not have to cut them. They will not compete again. Poliana Botelho is one that really didn't pan out the way the UFC wanted to, because suddenly she came out of nowhere and was kicking literally the bejesus out of people. She had spinning back kicks, she had body shots, and then stopped and has fallen by the wayside and hasn't done anything. But my darkest of horses is going to be a one and done Askar Mozharov, who will be making his UFC debut. And the reason why is because the UFC will realize, in fact, Askar Mozharov, also known as Arthur Shatakov, is actually a fraud when it comes to fights and fight records, and is not, in fact, a 25-7 fighter, and has actually lied multiple times to multiple staff members about fake wins and about real losses. So once the UFC realizes this guy is a puffed up version of what he thinks he is, they will let him go. Come at me, bro.
Oh, and and just a brief glance at his record, it's going to raise some eyebrows when you are 15-5 and you're taking on an 0-1 opponent in a China regional. Definitely some suspicious red flags there, and great observation. All right, so I guess I'll go ahead, change the clock back to 30 seconds, and
let's go. Let's everyone get a crack at this last one.
Yeah,
this is a fun one.
All right, so Ben, you're up first. Why is Erin Blanchfield versus JJ Aldrich buried as a prelim opener below many other unranked matches? And let's go.
Because UFC gonna UFC. I can't think of any logical explanation for it. And my only hope is that the bout order actually shuffles, at some point this week, and they get moved up to, arguably like the top prelim where it probably belongs. Like, it's a great matchup and very relevant.
All right. And still, such respect for the clock today, Ben. You get a gold star. Just beautiful. And let's see, wait for the buzzer. There it is. Okay, Jay, your turn.
The pattern, they're not following the pattern. And there's marketability, there's style. It's a flyweight fight. They're still trying to push flyweight. It doesn't make sense as to why Blanchfield Aldrich is. It has to be an error, because I can think of far better, worse fights that should be below this fight. I'm hoping that they adjust this and correct this mistake, because it doesn't make sense in any metric.
Yep, and respect for the clock as well. So
had to get it back.
Yeah, I can't make sense of this. I can't think of any legitimate reason why. The closest I can think of to a legitimate reason is exactly why it should be higher up, and that's because we don't really see any clear threats to the champ, Valentina Shevchenko. But man, if you have a flyweight that makes some noise, you got a 8-1 here person fighting. That sounds like a good record to build off on if she gets a win and you want her to be up for title contention. So I don't get it. I just don't get it. But we don't get a lot of things that the UFC does. So, all right, fellas. Well, that actually wraps up what we have prepared for our outline today for this edition of the Living Death Show. But before we go, I mean, this is Memorial Day that we're recording this. Any plans you got for the rest of the day, Ben?
Yeah, actually, as soon as we wrap this show up, I am headed over to my sister-in-law's house, like the house of my sister-in-law and her husband and their kids. We're going to grill everything in sight. I'm going to watch the little kids go play in the sprinkler and be glad that, like, once again, can't repeat this enough times, all of my children are out of high school and legal adults. And it's just a good feeling.
Well, I won't know that for quite some time, but congrats to you, sir. Jay, what do you got planned for the rest of the day?
All I have left to do today is to go and disappear into a field of corn like shoeless Joe Jackson. Rest in peace, Ray Liotta.
Oh, yeah. Yep, R.I.P. Ray Liotta. My plans for the rest of the day include chasing my daughter around, who is trying her best to walk. Chasing my son around, who's trying his best to destroy everything in sight. And I actually, at my day job, like I got asked to do some assignment due tomorrow morning. Like I got asked Friday to do this. Like, wait, great. No, so much for a 3-day weekend. So as soon as we're done, I'm gonna get back to some audio and video editing. And yeah, that's gonna be it. So I won't get to touch the new season of Stranger Things. I won't get to start We Own This City. I'm still behind on Moon Knight. I'm still behind on Atlanta. I still haven't seen Doctor Strange, but this is why, because I've got other things I need to do. So I'm gonna try to just bang out some Griselda records while I'm getting this editing done. And hopefully I'll be done with enough time to maybe go to the gym, maybe watch an episode of Atlanta before I pass out, and start the whole work week tomorrow morning.
Let me make one last recommendation because I do actually have one. Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, the new movie.
I heard it's kind of fire. I heard it's fire. It's on Disney Plus, right?
Yes. I strongly recommend it. If you've ever watched the show and want to be happy, it will bring that out for you.
Okay, I'm gonna have
to. They did it right. I guess that's all I have to say.
I have to force this on my kids. I forced Toy Story on them, and they love it. So that's a great relief. And Finding Nemo and stuff like that. So it breaks me out of the cycle of Elmo, Baby Shark, and Blue's Clues. Like, good. Oh, I got my son liking Muppet Babies too. So that's what's up.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, gentlemen. So that'll do it. Big shout out to Ben and Jay holding it down every week. You can catch their fight coverage on Sherdog.com. Jay will be on play-by-play. Ben having matches to make articles and doing this whole senior editor thing. So make sure you check out their work. And fire op-ed from Ben just went up about Shaq's rap career being just like Pudzianowski's heavyweight fight career. I need this in my life. So go ahead, check that out. And yeah, so remember, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.